What if I told you that some of the most breathtaking bridges on Earth, structures that governments, historians, and textbooks have credited to 18th and 19th century engineers, show architectural fingerprints that simply could not have been made by the tools, the workforce, or the knowledge those engineers possessed? What if the stone itself remembers something we were never taught? Tonight, we are going to look at 5 specific bridges, real bridges, bridges you can visit, and I am going to show you details, datable, measurable, observable details, that predate their official construction dates by centuries, possibly longer. Not folklore, not theory, architecture. Before we get into the 5 bridges, let me establish something, because I know exactly what some of you are already thinking. These are just old bridges. Humans have always built bridges. And you would be right if the question was simply whether they are old, but that is not the question. The question is who built them, and when, and using what. This is what 19th century construction actually looked like. Rope, hand chisels, scaffolding, hundreds of labourers. Now compare that to the stone surfaces and joint tolerances on the structures we are about to examine. The gap between what those tools could do and what the finished product shows is not a small gap, it is a chasm. For those new to this research, Tartaria, or Tartary, was one of the largest land empires documented on European maps from the 1500s right up to the early 1800s. It covered most of Central Asia, Siberia, parts of Eastern Europe, and according to some researchers, had cultural and architectural influence that reached far beyond even those borders. Then, almost overnight, it disappears from the maps. No conquest, no collapse, no explanation in mainstream history. Just gone. What was not gone, however, were the buildings, the bridges, the structures, still standing, quietly waiting for someone to start asking the right questions. These are our 5 bridges tonight. Let us begin. Bridge number 1, the Ponte Vecchio, Florence, Italy. Official date, 1345. Most people know the Ponte Vecchio as Florence's jewelry market bridge, the romantic one, the postcard one, built, according to official records, in 1345, after a flood destroyed an earlier wooden bridge. Simple enough story. Except look closer. Those arches, those are segmental arches, meaning they are less than a full semicircle, flatter, more structurally daring. And here is the critical detail. The segmental arch was not formally understood or documented in European engineering until the Renaissance, after 1345. The mathematics required to design a segmental arch without it collapsing under its own load requires an understanding of thrust lines, load distribution, and compression geometry. In 1345, European builders were still primarily using heavy Romanesque semicircular arches because they understood those intuitively. The segmental arch, that knowledge appears in Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, written 150 years later. But here is where it gets truly strange. The foundation stones of the Ponte Vecchio, the ones submerged in the riverbed, have been examined by engineers during restoration work, and the cutting precision on those submerged stones, stones that were never meant to be seen, is identical to the surface stonework. Perfect angles, perfect surfaces. This is not the work of masons cutting by feel and by eye. In Tartarian architectural study, this is called the invisible hand signature, the principle that structures built within a tradition of advanced Masonic knowledge applied the same precision regardless of whether the work would ever be visible. The craftsmanship was not performative, it was systematic. A bridge builder cutting stones for a riverbed foundation in 1345 with hand chisels by torchlight. Why would he produce tolerances that modern laser-cut stone barely matches? Unless he was not working from scratch, unless he was restoring or building upon something that was already there. The official story says, flood destroyed the old bridge in 1333, new bridge built by 1345. That is 12 years for a structure of this engineering complexity using medieval labor. Compare the Brooklyn Bridge with 19th century industrial equipment and 600 workers, took 14 years. 12 years, hand tools, segmental arches with modern tolerances. Either history is lying to us about what medieval Florentines could do, or someone else built this. Bridge number 2, the Devil's Bridge, Kromlau, Germany, official date, 1860. Stop, look at this. A perfect circle, not approximately circular, not close enough that the eye forgives the difference. A mathematically perfect circle, formed by the arch and its reflection in the water below. This bridge was designed so that from a precise point on the lake's edge, the arch and its mirror image complete a circle that, regardless of water level fluctuations, maintains its geometric perfection. This requires not just aesthetic vision, but mathematical modeling of the lake's average water table, the curvature of visual perspective from the intended viewing point, and a spatial understanding of how ellipses appear circular under specific angles of refraction. Official history says this bridge was built in 1860 by a German landowner named Friedrich Hermann Rochk, who supposedly had it constructed to beautify his estate. By who, exactly? That question never gets a satisfying answer in any official record. Here is something the mainstream tour guides never connect for you. There are over 50 bridges across Europe that locals have historically called Devil's Bridge. Pont du Diable in France, Pont del Diavolo in Italy, the bridges at Ponte Vecchio in Wales, and of course this one in Germany, and the folk legend attached to nearly all of them is identical. The bridge appeared too quickly, too perfectly, for human builders to have made it. In each story, the locals concluded it must have been the devil's work. Now, why would rural communities across 5 different countries, separated by geography and language, independently arrive at the same conclusion, that their local bridge was built by a supernatural entity? Unless what they were actually observing was the same thing, construction that clearly exceeded the known capabilities of the humans around them. Tartarian building philosophy, as reconstructed by researchers studying pre-reset architecture, consistently shows this characteristic. Bridges and public structures were not merely functional. They were designed as geometric instruments. The circle formed by this bridge is not decoration. In a tradition that used sacred geometry as the foundation of all civil construction, a perfect circle would have had symbolic, possibly astronomical, significance. Was this bridge truly built in 1860 by a German estate owner, or was it restored and integrated into a private garden from a pre-existing structure, and the estate owner simply took credit for commissioning what was, in reality, an excavation and preservation project? The stones will not tell you, but geometry does not lie. Bridge number 3, Pont d'Arc, Ardèche, France, official classification, natural formation. Now this one is different, because this bridge is not classified as man-made at all. Officially, it is a natural arch, carved by the river over millions of years. And I want to be careful here. I am not saying it is definitely not natural. What I am saying is, look at it. Parabolic curves occur in nature, but a parabolic arch that maintains structurally optimal thickness ratios across its full span, that is a very different thing. In nature, erosion is random. It carves away weak points. It does not produce uniform load-bearing geometry. This arch has uniform load-bearing geometry. More intriguingly, in 1994, just 7 kilometers from this arch, the Chauvet Cave was discovered, containing cave paintings now dated to 36,000 years ago. Those paintings show sophisticated artistic understanding, perspective, motion, layered composition. We accept without difficulty that humans 36,000 years ago could produce art of that complexity. Why is it so impossible that they could also shape stone? In Tartarian alternative history research, the Pont d'Arc falls into a category called integration structures, buildings or passages where a pre-existing natural feature was enhanced, shaped, or completed by human hands, and where, over centuries of natural weathering, the hand of the builder becomes indistinguishable from the work of the river. The question is not, is this natural or man-made? The question is, could it be both? And if the answer is yes, then the official classification that closes the door on any further investigation is not science, it is policy. Bridge number 4, SIOSE Pol, the Bridge of 33 Arches, Isfahan, Iran, official date 1602. This is one of the most extraordinary bridges on Earth, and almost no one in the Western world talks about it. SIOSE Pol, the Bridge of 33 Arches, was built, according to Persian records, by order of Shah Abbas I in 1602. His chief general, Alavadi Khan, allegedly designed and oversaw the construction. 295 meters long, 14 meters wide, 2 full stories, 33 arches, a functioning dual-level gallery running the entire length, tea houses, seating alcoves, hydraulic sluice gates integrated into the arch piers, gates that still function today, 400 years later. Let me tell you what a sluice gate is. It is a controlled water flow mechanism. To design one that functions correctly, you need to calculate the hydrostatic pressure at the gate at maximum flood level, the torsional force on the pivot mechanism, the material yield strength of the iron under cyclic loading, and the relationship between gate opening angle and volumetric flow rate. In 1602, European engineers were not producing equivalent hydraulic infrastructure until 150 years later. Yet here is this structure in Persia, fully realized, still functional, allegedly built in a single construction campaign by a military general. Persia falls squarely within the documented territories of Greater Tartaria on maps of this exact period, and Pol shares specific architectural DNA with structures found across those territories. The double-tier arcade system, the integration of civic function into the structure itself, and the orientation, aligned precisely to celestial north, not to the river bank, meaning the bridge was designed first and the approach roads were built to meet it, not the other way around. That is a Tartarian spatial signature. The structure is not subservient to geography. Geography is arranged around the structure. A military general, given an order in 1602, does not do that. A civilization with a pre-existing cosmological design philosophy does. Bridge number 5, Lugou Bridge, also known as the Polo Bridge, Beijing, China, official date 1192. Every stone lion on this bridge is different. Not slightly different, not within a limited design vocabulary different. Each of the 485 carved lions on the balustrades of the Lugou Bridge is unique, different posture, different expression, different accompanying smaller figures, and they have been present, according to official history, since 1192. The official story, built under the Jin dynasty in 1192, expanded and restored by the Qing dynasty in 1698. Marco Polo described crossing a magnificent bridge in this region in the 13th century. Simple enough. But stone conservators who have worked on this bridge consistently note something strange in their technical reports. The weathering profiles of the core structural stones are inconsistent with 800 years of exposure. Some sections show weathering patterns consistent with exposure timescales of 1500 to 2500 years. Stone weathering is not subjective. Under consistent environmental conditions, limestone and sandstone erode at calculable rates. The rate depends on mineral composition, average rainfall acidity, freeze-thaw cycles, and biological colonization. When conservators calculate backwards from the observed surface profile, some foundational sections of this bridge are not 800 years old, they are considerably older. The official response to this, every time it is raised, is restoration. The anomalies are attributed to repair work using older stone recycled from other sites. Recycled from what other sites? Sites that no longer exist, or sites that were made to not exist. In Tartarian research, northern China, historically called Kasei on European maps, is considered a distinct civilizational zone. The architectural tradition visible in the Lugou Bridge, the carved symbolic figures, the 11-arch hydraulic design, the astronomical orientation, these are not Han Chinese architectural signatures, they are Tartarian. Which raises a question that mainstream scholarship has never satisfactorily answered. Who built northern China's infrastructure before the dynasties that claimed it? These structures share a design language that does not begin or end with any single dynasty. It is a language written before the dynasties, or possibly by the civilization that the dynasties displaced. Conclusion: the pattern. 5 bridges, 5 countries, spanning 5 civilizations, and the same questions in every case. Construction speeds that do not match available technology, precision that exceeds the documented tools. Design knowledge that predates its supposed origin by generations. Hydraulic, geometric, and astronomical integration that implies a unified philosophical tradition of building. These 5 are not special cases, they are entry points. Once you know what you are looking at, once you know the Tartarian architectural signatures, you begin to see them everywhere, in bridges, in train stations, in government buildings that were supposedly built in the 1800s but whose stonework shows techniques not formally documented until the 1900s. The reset theory, the idea that a global civilization was systematically erased from the historical record in the 1700s and 1800s, its buildings reattributed, its maps redrawn, its name struck from every official document, does not require you to believe in conspiracy. It only requires you to trust what you can see. Stone does not forget who cut it. Geometry does not forget who calculated it. The bridges remember, even if we have been taught not to. The question is not whether someone built these. Obviously, someone did. The question is whether we are willing to admit that we do not know who, and that is exactly what someone wants us not to ask. If you made it to the end of this video, you already know the answer. Outro. I want to hear which bridge unsettled you the most. Drop it in the comments, and tell me why, not just the name. Tell me the specific detail that got under your skin. That is where the real conversation starts. If this is your first time here, welcome. This channel is for people who look at a stone and ask who put it there. Subscribe if that is you. And if you want to go deeper on any of these 5 structures, I have linked detailed research and architectural analyses in the description below. Everything in this video is sourced. Everything is verifiable. Go look for yourself. The bridges, remember, do you?